From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time, and I am super excited about today because we have a special guest that is going to break things down in a whole different way.
Not only is he going to break things down, he's going to predict things that you didn't even know were possible because this guy was all over it before anyone else was.
100%.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tyler from Football Unlocked. Tyler, sir, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, man, we're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited.
This is a big one for both of us because I had checked out your video on Trey Lance literally about a week before the draft, and not the one after they made the pick where you, my favorite line of yours, the Niners went nuclear, absolute nuclear. But the one that was saying that the Niners had gone up initially for Trey Lance before anyone else was even thinking about Trey Lance, before Trey Lance was even in the forefront of people's minds. It was literally like a day or two after they made the trade up. Why were you so on top of this and everyone else was not?
Well, one, Chris Sims, he's friends with your coach. So he said he had the idea and everybody followed along. But truly on it with San Francisco, it's looking around the whole landscape of the league. It's seeing that there are a couple offenses that kind of fit together. And if you look at the McVay scheme, you look at the Shanahan scheme and all the branches that have come off those family trees, they're all realizing that they have the same dilemma in front of them. And the way to solve that dilemma is to get arm strength at quarterback. And it wasn't a big leap, in my opinion, at the time, because when we were looking at quarterbacks and we were breaking them down, we really had a 1A, 1B, 1C dilemma between Zach, between Trey, and between Trevor Lawrence. And as the draft approached, I got to the point where I stopped wanting to make excuses for Trevor Lawrence from the things that I saw on film. And I had Zach as one just because he's a little bit more ready and polished, but Trey Lance was right on his back. So when San Francisco moved in, putting together the pieces of what a San Francisco offense would want, what we've seen all the other teams do, like the Rams going and getting Stafford. You see Tannehill and how that's worked in Tennessee. You see what Rodgers has done in Green Bay. All these quarterbacks with the arm talent that they have is that cheat code that makes this offense so much more functional and efficient. And then you go back and put one more piece together with the whole Josh Allen's quite an impressive quarterback coming out of your coach's mouth. And I looked at Trey Lance and I saw that quarterback. I saw the Josh Allen prospect. But the fact is this kid's way farther advanced than Josh Allen was at Wyoming. Putting those pieces together is really what put us on it from the start. It's the thing that made the most sense. We were chasing logic and scouting and hard work. It wasn't anything about connections or anything like that.
No, and you know what? That's extremely fair because I think the big knock on Allen coming out was the accuracy. And I didn't have the same concerns accuracy-wise with Trey Lance coming out, but I did have concerns mechanics-wise coming out. And then his pro day came up, and I saw his first pro day and was like, oh, a lot of those mechanics are cleaned up. And it was such a short amount of time that he was able to do that. I probably should have given him more credit, but I was so wrapped up in Zach Wilson at the time and thinking the Niners had made that move up, knowing that the Jets were rolling with Darnold. It was hard for me to get off that. I'd watched too much of Zach Wilson, and I didn't pay enough attention to Trey personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, if you look at quarterbacks from your scheme's standpoint, those two were the ones you circled, underlined, highlighted and said, I got to get one of those or don't even bother with this class because those are the two guys that fit it so well. So one of them goes to the Jets, the protege of Shanahan. One of them goes to Shanahan. There you go.
I mean, it couldn't be any better fit for either team looking to basically run the same style of schemes. You get the two guys that you just said are circled on everybody's list. Man, I'll tell you what, I think the thing I enjoyed most from that very first video you did, where you talked about the Niners were making the move up to Lance, is you talked about the horizontal offense and how important it was. And if you've ever, and the people who've watched the show, they know very, very often, it's Ant's go-to thing about the 49ers and what makes this team so special is the horizontal offense. Do you want to go into a little bit of why adding that vertical aspect makes that horizontal offense so deadly and so problematic for defenses?
Yeah, it's something that I talked about in the original video And it's something that's actually kind of evolving as we go through the league right now. You're seeing defenses switch to more of a 5-1-5. You're getting those outside linebackers up on the end. So now they're trying to cut off the head of the snake on the outside zone. They're trying to get people on the line of scrimmage to make sure that that can't flow, so that it's a one-on-one, you can shoot gaps and get into the backfield. But as you bring numbers forward, now those holes behind you get that much bigger. And when you're looking at the vertical aspect of the passing game, when you go to Kansas City, they had Alex Smith in the early days where they were throwing a lot of their short stuff, quick hitting stuff. But once you saw it get to the playoffs, the narrative of Andy Reid can't win in the playoffs was pretty much predominantly Alex Smith, because teams would have more of the gaps covered, and you'd see the cover two windows or the middle two shot. That was the big shot that had to be there for the offense to function on certain plays, and he wasn't taking it. He couldn't hit it. He couldn't put the ball into that region. And once you take that limitation away, like they did with Mahomes, and you start stretching vertical, there's no way to guard all of it. When I coached defense in college I worked with my college team on defense. One of the great coordinators that we had, he made the comment where he goes, defense isn't about taking everything away. It's taking away as much space as you possibly can. And when you add that bigger element, that arm talent, and now you have to respect everything deep. Even if the accuracy is off a little bit, you still have to respect it deep. That just stretches out the whole defense and it makes them break.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've noticed is that since the 49ers had such a great running game, but Jimmy Garoppolo's passes won't go past 18-plus yards, that everything is in that little tight box, and the defense is able to kind of clamp down and make it harder for those guys to operate in space. And that's why we think, when I watched your video especially, that it made me get excited about Trey Lance, because you're right, expanding vertically will open it up for everything. Now those safeties have to sit back farther, can't get as much involved in the run game, and also create more open lanes for these guys to run the ball and to get the players the ball in space. And that, you're right 100% about Mahomes opening things up in Kansas City. Do you think Trey Lance is going to have that same impact, or how long do you think it's going to take for him to kind of get to that level where he can start making impact plays down the field and really stretch this all the way where they can take full advantage of his skill set?
At the end of the first year.
Yeah.
It's a lot quicker than most people think. The aspects with quarterbacks, and this is something we saw with Justin Herbert last year, where the big arm talent, all the capabilities in that, being able to extend a play a little bit, if you simple things down a little bit, water things down a little bit in the playbook, that can show right away. A lot of these offensive coordinators, and Shanahan's one of them, are doing this phenomenal job of just isolating one read. And if you look at Herbert's success last year, a lot of it was a region read where one guy would curl, one guy would break behind it, or it was an overs cross deep down the middle of the field where he was really just reading that cross point. And a lot of other times where it was just watching his one guy waiting for him to break, because all the routes were just cluttered to spread out the defense so that guy could break into his spot. If Shanahan wants to incorporate that into the offense in the first year, Trey Lance will hit that throw in the first year.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a big thing, especially for Shanahan. I mean, we've seen that countless times where you get into a game and it seems like he has schemed or come up with 3 or 4 different plays that are specifically designed to free up one guy in space, where Jimmy comes out of a play action or some sort of drop back look. He's looking one way, biding his time, and then he comes back across the field and finds the one guy in space, whether they've flooded, whether they've shown a screen look one direction and come back and thrown a screen another direction, whatever it is. He's done a really good job of that already. So like you're talking about here, if this is the plan with Trey Lance, I mean, I could definitely see that being something that doesn't take Trey Lance too long to develop, because he's going to have OTAs in training camp too. Do you think having preseason this year is an even bigger advantage for Trey Lance than, let's say, if he had come in last year in the 2020 COVID year and didn't have training camp or mini camp to get him ready?
More reps is always a better thing. I mean, really, from the start, more reps is a better thing. I'm a Packers fan. We're now finally starting to see a little bit of Jordan Love, but we didn't get a chance to even look at him last year. And the coaches got limited practices, limited reps in a game. And as much as these OTAs and these mini camps are all important and the beat writers like to talk about it, show me the player in a game, please. Like, I don't really care about like which beat writer has decided today that he looked magnificent or he looked like garbage. Show me him in a game, because that's really the test. Like, all this OTA, all these practices, even if it's against live bullets, you're still not in that situation where you have your 35 or 25 seconds to get that play off. You have your 4-second test, pass the dang test. And that's what you have to prove in the game. So the more time, the better, of course, for all of these guys. Zoom meetings for learning football is probably not a fun thing to do, I can imagine. But having this year be a normal year is much more beneficial to all the rookies.
Yeah, how much do you think Trey Lance is actually going to expand Kyle Shanahan's playbook? Because I've heard people talk about him being Trey being able to pick up the offense, but I wonder how much that will expand. I think I've heard you talk about 11-on-11 football with Trey Lance. Is that something that he can definitely expand in and take kind of Kyle Shanahan's offense to the next level?
Yeah, when it comes to the run game specifically with Trey Lance, there are some people that think Trey Lance is like a Lamar Jackson athlete, and settle that down. He's not quite there, but he is a legitimate threat as a runner. And once you have that on the field, look at Josh Allen, his size, what he runs. He's a 4.7 athlete. He's not a world beater athlete, but people are concerned about his ability to take off. That leaves a spy in the middle of the field. That will have defenses having to hold different gap integrities when they're doing their stretch run. So even if he only runs 2-3 times a game, that threat of 11-on-11 is always in the back of the defense's mind, and that's going to make the run game that much better. But as far as expanding the offense, Jimmy G is a pretty sharp guy, but there's not going to be a play on the field that Trey Lance can't run. So Shanahan's at full display, can run anything he wants to run as soon as year 2, I would believe.
Yeah, and that's incredible, and that's awesome. Because you had talked about it, that since Shanahan had been in San Francisco, you hadn't really seen the full Kyle Shanahan offense to its full power potential. A team that, when he was with the Falcons was averaging 34 points a game. Niners haven't hit over 30 yet. Do you think that the number is about the same as it was in Atlanta, that this offense with a guy like Trey Lance, with all the weapons healthy, with the Raheem Mosterts and the speed there, you got your Kittles, your Ayuks on the outside, you got your Deebo Samuels who can do all sorts of crazy things. If Jalen Hurd cannot be broken for half of a second, maybe they have an even more diverse weapon. Could this team do you think they have the potential to put up more than 34, 35, 36 points a game? Or is that the number that they should be shooting for?
It'll be interesting to see how much of last year was a lack of crowd noise and a lack of things, because we saw an uptick in offense, a significant uptick in offense. And the efficiency that offenses are able to run with at this point in time is quite ridiculous. In Atlanta, they had Julio, but the surrounding cast was Taylor Gabriel, Mohamed Sanu. They had Devonta Freeman, but Devonta Freeman isn't a world beater himself. It was partially the system with the tackle, the center, the big bodies that you've brought in for the offensive line this year. I'm thinking it's entirely possible they break that number. They break the number that they put up in San Francisco or in Atlanta, and that was insane when it happened. But it's just the fact that even with Matt Ryan, does Matt Ryan have a huge arm? No. Does Matt Ryan have the threat of running? No. There's too many different aspects that you have to watch as a defense in this situation, and with efficiency just ratcheting up every year, those numbers could get ridiculous. The only thing is, do they need to score that much? Because you actually have a defense that can hold somebody down, whereas that Atlanta defense was, knock you off the field or get blown off the field themselves.
That is true. That is true. And in matter of fact, it's still the case today. They have not fixed that problem yet still. I gotta ask you this here. In comparison, Jimmy right now, Trey right now, if you're a front office guy, if you're a coach there, if you're someone who has to make a decision, which guy do you want starting in 2021 and why?
Me personally, I want to start the young kid right off the bat. And the reason for that is I am perfectly okay with watering down the offense, putting him in win stacking situations and slowly expanding that playbook out to challenge him consistently through the first year, but understand that I do have to rein it in for him a little bit. The question is Shanny, because he is very much so tied to that playbook, and good for him because it's one of the best in the league. But he might want to start with Jimmy right off the bat just because he understands that offense fully and he doesn't have to water it down at all. we watched last year where Anthony Lynn, who has that same, we're going to trust our Warriors already who have proven it, wanting to stick with Tyrod Taylor, and it took a horrible mishap for them to put Herbert in. And his offensive coordinator and his quarterbacks coach, Pep Hamilton and Steichen, they both started modifying this playbook to make sure it would work for Herbert. And then when they got to that point, they said, well, I guess it's just too dangerous. We have to just leave him in. Like, Lynn wanted to go back to Tyrod even after we saw what Herbert did in the first couple games. I think if you put Lance on the field and you saw what Lance could be, I think at worst in year one, he's a level 3 quarterback. And we grade him on tiers. You have elite, you have 2, you have 3, and then you have a 3-4. 3-4s are fringe starters. That's what Jimmy G is. He's a smart guy. He has a starting quarterback in this league, but he is a fringe starter. On level 3, you can start taking strengths and using your offense to maximize those strengths, and you can make them look like a level 2 or a level 1 quarterback if you put them in the right circumstances. Now, how broad those circumstances will be for Trey Lance in year one, that's the question. But I've kind of had the opinion from the start where I said, I like Trey better than Jimmy G right now. I understand if Shaney trusts Jimmy G first. But if they put Lance on the field day one, buckle up because Shaney trusts him already, and this is going to get crazy.
Yeah, do you think it's going to be an actual open competition in training camp that they're going to give Trey Lance an opportunity to actually push and take this job?
I don't think it's a competition. I think it's a question of, does Shanahan believe fully that Trey Lance is ready to run this offense full throttle? If he can't, it's Jimmy's, because Jimmy, we know, can run it. If Trey can run it, it's not a competition. It's just, are you prepared enough day one to be the guy?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Man, that's fair. And you know what? I don't think a lot of fans are looking at it that way. I can tell you right now, 49ers fans are very emotional over this, and it's one or the other, right? You have your Jimmy stands, you have your Trey stands. Everyone's taking their sides. They think this is going to be a full-out camp battle, and I think that's probably more along the lines of what it is. This is Trey right now with OTAs is getting an opportunity to demonstrate he's learning what he needs to learn, and when they get into actual training camp preseason, he's going to have a chance to demonstrate that he understands the offense, and the more he demonstrates, the better chance he has to start. And if he doesn't demonstrate or check the boxes that Shanahan needs him to check, I think at the end of the day, they'll just roll with Jimmy until he's fully ready. I think you feel like he could be ready this year. If that was the case, could you see if the Niners were rolling, 12, 13 games in the season, they were doing really well, they're easily a playoff contender, Jimmy's playing fine, but Trey is getting better and better, they're putting him in more situations, he's thriving on the field. Could you see Shanahan, if he feels in week 12, week 13 that Trey's ready, pulling the trigger even if the Niners are having success?
That would take a lot of guts. That would take a lot of guts, because as I was watching Kansas City in Mahomes' first year, he wasn't playing at all. And as it was getting later and later in the season, you looked at Kansas City, you looked at the horses they had, you looked at how they were playing in the games. And at that time I said, the only chance they have of winning a Super Bowl is inserting Patrick Mahomes right now. And then they came out in the first round or first game. They lost the first game after he played in week 17. And I said, you just give the ball to Patrick Mahomes and you see what can happen. That's what they should have done. Now, how quick does Shanahan want to get to that? Does Shanahan really have the, you know what? I think I can win a Super Bowl with Trey right now. So, and I know I can't win it with Jimmy. So let's go. It's possible. I've always thought from the start that this was going to be a situation a lot more like Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick, where as the season wore on, it was going to be, it's time to turn it over now. Give the kid his chance and see what happens. And good things happened the last time with that. Now, this isn't a talent for talent take. This is just a schedule take. But I really think at some point in time, like happened with Goff and McVay, Shanahan's going to slowly get tired of having Jimmy G out there. He's going to see this new toy and be like, I want that new toy, because if I have that, all these other things are possible. And he's just going to – I think he'll go to it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Watching Trey, I know there's been a lot of talk about how he does – how he reads defenses. Also, he called his own protections, all that stuff, and that he was real inept in the play action game. How do you see that translating? Is he going to be able to do that right away? Because, having your back to the defense, on play actions and then turning around isn't the easiest thing to do right away. Some of the college quarterbacks struggle with it. but he's done it so much. Do you think he's going to be able to pick up this stuff right away and be able to call protections and everything early on, or is this something that's going to develop because of the complexity of Shanahan's system?
Well, with every rookie, they are a rookie. So it's going to develop to a degree. But when we were talking about quarterbacks before the draft and we were saying who's pro-ready, who's pro-ready by the definitions, we went through all the different definitions of what pro-ready is and said, if you look at this from the archaic way of what is pro-ready, the most pro-ready quarterback is Trey Lance. He's running an offense that most similarly represents a pro-style offense. He's the one who's doing all the different footwork aspects of being under center, being out of the gun, boots, rolls, all the other things about that. He has that play action game. He's calling his protections at the line of scrimmage. He's killing and picking plays at the line of scrimmage. That's phenomenal experience to come into the league with. And the fact that he's already shown he can do it is a positive. Now, will it be up to NFL speed day one? Probably not. But if you ask any other quarterback in this class to do that, they'd be even further behind.
That's fair, and I think that's kind of what my thought process was. And I liked when I watched that video, both of them really, and you were talking about Justin Fields and some of the indecision and the indecisiveness. It was part of the reason why I was a little iffy on Justin Fields, and why I wasn't 100% sure if who the guy was going to be if it wasn't Zach Wilson that fell there at 2. But I want to know from you, as a Niner fan, we've played the Packers a lot the last few years. You're a Packers fan. You brought that up. Look, Jordan Love, that whole situation there, how did you feel about that draft pick? Do you think he's going to – you like the draft pick?
I liked the draft pick. I saw a quarterback on the board who had fallen lower than he should have went in the draft. Anytime you have a chance to take a value quarterback, you take that quarterback. Especially when you're in a situation where it is. As soon as they took Jordan Love, I put a timestamp on Aaron Rodgers' career ending in Green Bay and the 2022 offseason. I expected 2 years to get this kid ready because we had switched over to the Tennessee model of offense that comes with the fleur, and that is a very Tannehill system. That was our big-armed, mobile quarterback who can make things very simple. Now, it won't be pretty, not like it can be with Trey Lance, but it was something that I thought fit the template of what we were building as a franchise very well. Now, what do I take about the whole drama with the Aaron Rodgers situation? This ain't my first rodeo. I was around for Favre. Like, when the day comes that we know who's going to be on the field, then that day comes. Until then, let them talk.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair, 100%. I wanted to get from you also. How excited are you for week 3 this year then?
Horribly unexcited.
I actually think it's going to be a better game than you might think. I know that there's stuff with Green Bay and maybe the defense and all of that, but they have, man, you guys are just, you find a way to keep yourself in games, and Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. Do you think he's playing, though? That's the question.
If he's playing, if he's not playing, that doesn't change the fact that the middle linebackers that we play are nothing like the linebackers that you play. And when you put that in misdirection, I mean, now we don't have Patton, who misdirection blew his mind out of his ears. But now with the new defensive coordinator who has the experience with the Rams, you guys still score on the Rams. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly we fall into that. I love our secondary. The defensive front has 2 studs on it and some good players. It's the Kamal Martin. It's the Chris Barnes. It's Isaiah McDuffie. Figuring out which one of those can actually, move, that would be a positive. I'm a defensive guy, and I always want that one eraser linebacker. And I look over you guys with Warner, and I'm jealous. And we just don't have anybody close to that vicinity. And it's so important because the linebackers, they're kind of role dying in this league unless they can do the stuff that Fred Warner can do, which is be everything at all times.
Yeah, exactly.
He's special.
And if you look at those games, kind of when the Niners really played the Packers tough and kind of beat them pretty bad, especially in the NFC Championship, it was all predicated on the run and just establishing the run game and getting it going. And now we have Trey Sermon also being there as well. I want to know what you think his impact could be, because we had John Chapman on, and he talked about Sermon was going to lead the team in carries. I'm wondering what you're seeing Sermon's potential being in this 49er system.
Well, the 1.5 that I put up was you ran 15 times in a row, I believe. And then your coach was asked why, and he said, because it worked. Yeah, that's embarrassing. When we were going through the scouting process back in March, I was a pretty big advocate that Trey Sermon is the second best running back in this class. I had knee-jerked at that time saying that Najee Harris was still running back 1. And after the draft, I went through the side-by-side, best of game, watching through the running backs, watching them on similar plays and how they were showing their impact on those plays. And I realized that I had just been way too nice to Najee Harris. I think the best running back in this entire draft class is Trey Sermon.
Wow.
His vision, his burst is – burst, there's a couple faster running backs, but his vision is the best in this draft. And having the running backs that you guys brought in this year, bringing the Elijah Mitchell, who I'm not as excited about him as some guys are, but having Trey Sermon, there's a part of me that thinks that there's this alteration going on with people trying to cut off the edges of the outside zone. And I think that Shanahan might be coming onto this and realizing that we need to go a little bit more vertical with our zone and go straight downhill. Well, if you get a little bit bigger running backs, a little bit bigger interior offensive linemen, now you're going to be pushing people off the ball and he's going to be coming downhill. I expect Trey Sermon to lead this backfield from the jump. The Shanahan backfield has always been a 2-man game. As much as people think it gets spread out, it's only spread out when he doesn't have the horses to carry him. He had Devonta Freeman, he had Tevin Coleman. That is what he wants to see. Now, with Mostert being who Mostert is, he's a dangerous individual, but he is fragile as all get out. And that puts him onto the Tevin Coleman role in of itself, just because you can't have him hitting over 150, 160 touches. But that leaves a 280 touch role for Trey Sermon right from the jump. And I feel like with Wilson having his meniscus banged up, that he's going to grab that role right from the go.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is bold, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like that take.
He made Devonta Freeman, who was a very well coached, very poised and quality running back, took him in the 4th round, and he made him a household name almost immediately. Why can't Trey Sermon do it from the 3rd?
I like it. You're not wrong. You're not wrong there at all. And you know what? 280 touches, I think, would blow just about every person's mind in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And the Jeff Wilson injury opens the door for that possibility. It really, really does.
Yeah, I love that take, and I love running the football. I like what you said about the inside zone as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting it more of an inside run game going. I think maybe there is a huge signal in the fact that they brought back Juice. That's definitely something they need to do. I love that because you're right. People are cutting off that outside zone and really changing things up. It would make sense for these guys to go ahead and adjust and get ahead of the game before. It gets out of hand and they're just really cut off because McVay's struggled with that. Ever since the Patriots cut him off in the Super Bowl, they can't get the running game going the way it was.
Yeah, and they actually tried that early in the season. You saw them actually doing more 45s on their blocking. And with that, it suited Malcolm Brown better than it suited Cam Akers and it suited Darrell Henderson. So they kind of went back to the old idea because they couldn't get the best back on the field. But that's because when you go a little bit more downhill, it's about making your running back's eyes work. Like you have to have the vision. You have to be able to change hip like mid-step, and that's a certain specialty. Be a powerful guy. See where that hole is developing. 1, 2 quick little steps, and now you're on the other hip of the offensive lineman, and you sealed away your defensive tackle. It's going to be a really nice fit. Let's just leave it at that.
I like this. I like it a lot, man. This is some great insight. This would explain a lot of the draft choices.
It would.
This would explain why they went the Aaron Banks, the Jalen Moores of the world, why they went with the Trey Sermon. They take another running back after that, especially if that's going to be your Mostert replacement here in a few years, and Trey Sermon's going to be your workhorse. All of it's starting to add up and make sense. Tyler, man, we really, really appreciate the insight. You taking the time to come on. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at football unlock, no ED because, character limits. On YouTube, we have our channel. It's Football Unlocked on YouTube. On Obviously, the draft process was where we kind of came to life. We've been starting this in September of last year. Up until about February, we were kind of yelling into the echo chamber of YouTube, but people have jumped on board, and we're really excited about where this is going. In the coming weeks, we are going to be starting in on, because we're in the dead season of football, we're going to be talking about all the draft prospects on our fantasy football board and where they fall in. But we don't just talk like this is how many points he's going to score. We do systems analysis. We look into how these schemes actually interplay with the league, and we trace them around through the coaching trees of the league and go, well, if you have this level talent without this surrounding cast, how does that change points? How does the offensive line and quarterback raise and diminish the points that are capable within the system? And we'll have a lot of scheme and a lot of strategy backing into our fantasy football takes, because that's just the way we do fantasy. Everybody has their own methodology and everything, but we try and keep it pretty straight to football.
That's awesome.
Not only is that awesome, I am going to be all in on this. So I will be watching everything that you guys put out. I'm going to be trying to use this to get an edge up this year in fantasy football. And who knows, maybe we'll be bringing some of that over here and just giving some little snippets and tidbits of what Football Unlocked's doing on the Cutback. So. Just let people know what's going on. Man, Tyler, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Seriously.
Yeah, thanks.
Who wants to bring me on the platform like this? Like, I really appreciate getting the feedback from you guys, and starting off with that Trey Lance thing, standing out on that ledge, kind of, but that's the weird thing. Some people call it a ledge, and what we say is we always want to do the most salacious story we possibly can that's going to absolutely come true.
I like that. And thank you for coming on. Make sure everyone jumps over to this channel and subscribes. I mean, jump over there and subscribe. I enjoy watching it. I know Alex does too, and everyone will enjoy your stuff. So I hope everyone jumps over there and subscribes right now.
Thank you.
At this very moment. Yeah, man. It was great. Tyler, we really appreciate it, man. And 49ers fans, until next time, you stay safe.
Remember, the right way
is always the 49ers way.